Hey there. Welcome to the Pine Island Experience podcast. I'm Joanna Anderson with my husband, Trygve. Each of our episodes will be conversations with fellow Pine Islanders.
The goal of our podcast is to share with you our experiences, what we have found to be fun, and what makes the Pine Island experience so unique.
It's massive. I'm up way past midnight now, editing, and there's so much involved, and also sound. I know we spoke of sound. OMG, when that is the most important thing, as well as everything else. Of course, getting the lines or telling the story in a not like we do it on a play in the theater, but telling a story in a movie is very different. It's a lot of less dialogue. When we filmed Roses Up Line, I had 2 pages of dialogue going on. And when I think it was Boyd Gaines, he looked at my lines and he synopsized it all to one word. And that's how powerful it is when you see. And that to me was stunning, is that he is a great teacher for that. And they all are. Less is more.
That was Wendy White discussing all that she is learning on her latest artistic journey, becoming a movie director. And now, here is Wendy. Well, we have Wendy White with us today. So exciting. We so enjoyed Roland, your husband. And you said yes, that you would also interview. So thank you for joining us today. And when we look at your background, your information, your resume, where do you begin? I mean, I am just amazed by all you've done, writer, producer, director, artist, painter. I mean, it just never ends. So we'll ask you about it, but you just fill us in on what you really want to tell us today. So welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Certainly. Tell us about you growing up. We read about that. Fill us in on that, if you could, where you grew up and to coming here.
No, that's fine. That's a good place to begin at the beginning. That's wonderful. Thank you. Well, I was born in Rockaway Beach, New York. This is pretty much a little beach village outside of New York City. And I was born, I have a twin brother named Bruce. So we grew up in a little house by the sea. The early years were wonderful by the beach. Mm-hmm. That's the first home we lived in. And then when we were 5, we moved to Lawrence, Long Island, into suburbia. And we went to the local schools there, and I graduated from Lawrence High School. Those early years were a lot of fun, and not only at Rockaway Beach, but in suburbia. And Lawrence was a great education. It was probably the happiest years of my life in high school, because I was involved with every club, and I worked also since I was 10, and I have a lot to share about that. But my life was very full and fun during those years.
And then your dad was an artist.
Yes, my dad was an artist and also a mechanical engineer and a writer, and really grew up very close to him. Especially when I was a baby, I think he'd have me sit on his lap while he painted, and I kind of grew up just loving watching him paint and loved the smell of oil paint.
Oh.
It gave me great peace. I'm very sensitive to smells and music and color, and just watching him. And I've kind of connected oil paint and painting with him. And then Bruce and I would often model for him. He'd have us on the couch and we'd sit for hours, probably not realizing what was happening, but he would create beautiful paintings of us. So I guess one of my first worlds was not only being with my brother, because being a twin is like being born married. We were always together, but also being with Dad and painting and always around me. So it was a great, great influence.
Maybe kind of a chicken and egg question.
Yeah.
Do you think it's the connection with your father that you just mentioned that kind of drove you to the arts? Or do you think it was maybe more the DNA, like, that skill and that love of that medium was kind of maybe, passed down, or some combination? But to adopt it as a profession is kind of at a next level.
That's true. I think it's a combination. When I learn more about my family, I think There was a grandmother that was an opera singer and a great aunt who painted, and they were from Poland and Russia and also Spain. I found out more about lineage later. And there are a lot of creative folks in my genes. And that's a funny thing to say. But I guess then being very comfortable at home with painting became maybe more of a go-to, and especially through the years of school. And music also became my first voice. Both my brother and I spoke late, probably as twins do. We had our own twin language. But then also sounds. I'm very sound sensitive and maybe didn't talk, maybe to say regular with our parents, but we had our own little world of communication. So the combination of art and music, and then came dance. We took ballet early. Different worlds of communication was the go-to. So by the time we got to probably nursery school, we already had such a creative world going on. That became its own fun thing.
Started when you were 40 years old, for example. Right. You say, if I'd only been exposed to that earlier, not as a regret, right? But you find it new and interesting. And here, to your point, by the time you're hitting school, you've been exposed to 5 or 6 different ways to express yourself. Right?
Yes, and have fun with it. And even athletics and sports, even that came naturally for me. Bruce and I would always be wrestling and running and playing. So by the time also we were in grade school, I was loving sports, and they put me on the track team right away. And then so many things happened early in my life. The teachers, I think I was in 2nd and 3rd grade, and they pulled me out of class. I was still doing well in class, but to put me into band and then into theater. And I even had a stutter when I was young, because maybe I wasn't with Bruce, but when I was out talking in class, I had a slight stutter. And one of the teachers saw that. He put me right up on stage. So that was just, I don't know, I was so lucky. And I always loved teaching, teachers and teaching because of that, because they see things we don't see. Mm-hmm. When I was on stage, the stutter went away. And when I was up, practicing with my peers, it just became its own magical world of theater. So early.
That's so great that he knew how to fix that, that would be the last thing you would think people would, but here it did it. How wonderful.
It did. And it became its own world of fun. And it just, a lot of encouragement, a lot of friendships. Mm-hmm. So I'm very grateful for all the teachers along the way.
And now you're teaching.
Yes, I am. That's a lifetime dream.
Oh, that's lovely. Where did you, it's hard to know where you began. Did you begin in school with painting or writing? With writing and painting, and what came first, or did they come together?
Yeah, it's funny. It's like the chicken and the egg kind of question. What came first? Probably music came first.
Oh.
And painting was probably just something that came later. I progressed with writing. In all my classes, I was asked we all write diaries when we're young. Maybe not all, but I love writing. And Dear Diary. So my teachers encouraged that, and it became very, not to say fluent, but it became my very comfortable world. I still write every day. Mm-hmm. So, and I have journals and archives of memories to share. And when I write a play, I pull out a journal to bring out that experience and then create it from there. It's based on true life.
That's your research right there.
Yes.
Reading what you wrote about years ago. That's amazing.
So it's its own world. It's its own friend. Writing's a friend. Painting's a friend. Music is a friend. So.
Well, and you paint to music?
Yes, I paint to music.
I read you did that?
Yes.
It's all connected.
It's all connected. The breakthrough of really going back to painting would happen during college because jump ahead a few years. My dad became blind when I was 14. And my mom also suffered from some health conditions. She had a heart issue, and she wasn't well, and Dad wasn't well. My brother also had asthma. So everyone was in their rooms not well. I also had asthma, but I've overcome it. I really wanted to be, everyone was asking me when I was young, because we were both doing really well in school. There was another thing that was happening. Bruce and I were put in every class together. I don't know if they do that anymore with twins, but we were right next to each other, and Bruce would get a 98, I would get a 94. I mean, he just excelled in school. And then by being with each other, it was a competition. And luckily, we got into the best colleges as a result. Bruce is really talented in computer programming. He became a ham radio operator when that was happening. So he'd be in his room day and night doing the ham radio, talking to people all over the world, doing Morse code. Well, I'll be out and about doing music and art and playing, well, even football with my friends in the street. I was more outgoing, but the combination of both of us propelled us to really learn a lot. And then we were lucky to receive full scholarships to our universities. And I was able to go to Clark University for first year on full scholarship to study medicine. And Bruce went on to Yale on full scholarship to study computer engineering. And
So you had to separate.
well, it was our first separation.
Oh,
And that was probably the hardest thing in my life. It still is. But the result of all that education and encouragement also I'm circling back a second, but when I went to Clark, I wound up really doing well in pre-med. And there's another aspect of my life. My uncle Irving founded Mount Sinai Medical School. And this is where I was going before. When I was very, very young, all the uncles and elders were saying, so Wendy and Bruce, what do you want to do with your life? And we're 10 years old, 11. I mean, but they were so serious. And my uncles were like very tall and they were doctors. And I guess I thought I was supposed to answer. So I went on a long walk on the beach once. We grew up on the beach and I sat on the jetty and I really was praying. I pray young. Have a very spiritual side to me too. And I received kind of a message from the universe, from God, and saying, you are here to help people. So I took it very literally, being 10 years old. And really, it was a rainy day and the clouds opened, the light came through, and I said, okay, I'm here to help people. So I went back home and another family, probably it was a holiday. And I said, well, I want to be a doctor. I'm here to help people. And then they all went, oh. So there was a lot of encouragement from that point on for my pre-med years. I fulfilled my medical school requirements young. And then I was invited to kind of study with Uncle Irving at Mount Sinai Medical School to do kidney research. And my Uncle Arthur was the head surgeon there. So my early life, this was all just the blessing of the circumstances of my birth. There was a lot of support from everywhere to pursue whatever I wanted or felt called. It was more like everything in my life is a calling. So,
and you answered all those callings.
Maybe I take things literally.
So medical school is no small commitment.
True.
And you get through successfully and all that. When does the transition from something so scientific and clinical into the arts?
Okay. That's very profound because that is another turning point in my life because I had the second fellowship the second year at Mount Sinai while I was at Barnard. I actually transferred into Barnard from Clark because I wanted to come closer to be with my parents. My father had a heart attack my first year at Clark University, and he was under care, and I just felt like I really wanted to be closer to him. My mom started working in a uniform store, and she started working full-time, so it was a lot on her. So I wanted to come back home to be closer. So my best friend's father had been involved with, I think, also recommending Wesleyan University. So I went there, and then I tried to get into Yale to be close to Bruce. But I wound up at the very last moment in August. Uncle Irving recommended Barnard College to apply to, and his wife Felice Schwartz actually founded Catalyst, is a really well-known organization in New York City, and she was a tremendous pioneer for women and going forth in their careers. And so they would have me over for lunch in their Fifth Avenue apartment. It was kind of like a movie. And Felice said, why don't you try Smith and Barnard and Wellesley? And you never know. So I actually never heard of them because I was so wanted to actually study with my brother, go to Yale. And then I applied at the very last moment to those schools. And I got an interview at Barnard and I was accepted. And the next week I started. And I didn't realize really what I walked into. Barnard College is the top Ivy League, one of the number one colleges for women now in the country. And then Columbia University's Ivy League. And I just was a beautiful campus and offered much more than I could ever believe, and has affiliations with everyone in Manhattan. So I walked into a treasure trove. I was called in. So, and believe me, some schools said no. So in my life, it's the doors that open that I wound up walking through that have a lot more blessings in store. So to answer your question, sorry, there's so much to share. During my junior year at Barnard, I had already fulfilled my medical school requirements. And it was becoming a very long tunnel of work. I was studying 24/7 almost, and then I would run track. I became captain of the track team, the first women's track team there. So I was studying and running and competing. Then on another wonderful thing happened because I love sports. My coach kind of really mentored me, and then I started training for the 80 Olympics because I'm very strong and I do shot put and discus and I love running the mile and hurdle. So I had all these coaches going on. Plus I was studying full-time pre-med and plus working as well because I was there on scholarship. So there was no time for Wendy time. And that's really was an epiphany. I wound up fulfilling all the requirements and I fulfilled language requirements. And then I said, I'm going to take a painting course on Friday afternoon at Barnard. And I just applied for a painting course. I said, this would be fun. And Dad, that summer, encouraged me and he gave me his painting box. And by that time, Dad was undergoing one more operation for his eyes. He was still blind in both eyes, but he gave me his painting box and it was so familiar from my babyhood. And I went right into taking painting on Fridays and it became like this oasis of peace and calm and a time that it was finally time out and I was finally happy, truly happy painting. I just took that seriously and I started taking another painting course. And that summer I met with my cousin Irving. He's my cousin. I call him Uncle because he's much older. But I told him how much I love painting. And I also auditioned for the local play. They invited me to be part of a Alpha Delta Phi fraternity. They were letting women in at the time. It's just a long story, but they were having a play. And I won the audition. I started singing. I mean, all these things started developing again from my childhood. I got involved with theater and art and dancing. And then I was supposed to be pre-med and, just very serious in that pursuit. Because actually those days in the laboratory, and I respect labs and all the research that goes on, the studies, the assays. We were doing surgery and I was involved in, but it is a total world in its own. So Uncle Irving met with me one day in his office and I told him, he said, how's it going? And I said, I really love art and I'm thinking of changing my major to become an artist and a writer. And at that point, theater, playwriting or movies wasn't in my field of possibilities yet. And he said, well, when you're a doctor, it's something you have to be committed to 24/7. And he kind of gave me the reality check of it being all or nothing, which I know doctors or my peers who do have pursued that pursuit. I honor them, respect them, but it takes over in other words, he said it takes over your life. And so I already had the requirements and I could have gone that path, but I really had to have a deep heart to heart with me, with Wendy, with little Wendy, big Wendy. And art and painting and theater at that time was what I loved to do the most. So I switched majors, was accepted to the School of Visual Arts at Barnard and at Columbia. And then I pursued another major and I was going with 5 or 6 electives every day to fulfill those requirements. So I did both. But the family at the time understood but didn't understand. But yet my dad always said, I want you to be happy. So I always had his support.
Yeah, that was a great thing to say to you.
Yes.
That's all you needed to hear.
That's all I needed to hear. And of course, everyone has always said over time, I want you to be happy. Mm-hmm. And yet the world of art, going into that world of art was a different pursuit. I didn't think at the time about the money aspect. Always a lot of my friends said, well, you're choosing a career that would be lucrative. And I said, it doesn't matter. I really want to be happy and I was just entrusted the universe and had faith that art will provide by doing that. So
and did you journaled all this? Mm-hmm. So that must be interesting reading for you.
That's true. It is. It's a lot of turning points where I'm able to answer that question because I do remember, and I did write a play about it, that turning point and how serious he was and how serious I became and taking his questions seriously.
So you finally get done with the education then. What's your first foray as, I guess, a professional artist?
The first job I received was at Art News magazine. And I graduated, let's say it was 1981, and I was needed to get work. And Grandma also was around my life when I was very early. Another movie I'm working on, it's called Typing. So Grandma, when I was age 3, she kind of sat with me in the old Royal typewriter and she said, "You got to learn to type so you can make a living." Like Grandma kind of knew, and I'm like, no. And then she would sit with me and press my little fingers. And then I learned typing really young, by the way, because of Grandma. And also she would draw with me, and she was also wonderful. To answer your question, as a result, I learned how to type and took typing in high school and passed all the tests. And typing to me became music. So I'm able to treat it like I type 90 words a minute. And I'm very quick, I'm very fast as a result of learning so young and also having fun with it. And then one day I realized the breakthrough of it's kind of like music. And I play half a dozen instruments. So typewriter became another one. So to answer your question, when I graduated Barnard, which is the top school, I think, as I learn now, I'm still involved. I'm class president for 45 years, and I love the college. But to go to an interview for a job after going to this wonderful college and having all these credentials, and they say, "How fast can you type?" And I wrote another play about this. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I had to really check myself and my reactions. I've learned to be more and more humble and grateful with everywhere I go, because when you react like, "How dare you ask me how much I learned how to type?" I went to Barnard and this is what I could do. But I kind of needed a job. I had my first apartment on Waverly Place near NYU. And I really literally, not consciously or aware of it, I guess I was becoming a starving artist very young because the income is low. Yet I had a painting. I was always up on the easel and lived that life and learned to take care of myself. I had to learn to take care of myself during those challenging years too.
And you didn't walk away from it.
Never.
You could go work and it wouldn't be the same for you.
That's a good point. Yeah, because some of these jobs can take over. Like my peers could easily get into a position of management and they started traveling or they became vice president of a company. And my peers would say, "Wendy, you could easily become a vice president or president." I said, no, I really want to maintain doing my art, and painting and writing in the evenings or the weekends. I would have shows in the village. And I'm very careful what I commit to. I want to do my very, very best. So if I'm working for your company, and I say, "No, I really can't go to Brazil this weekend. I have an art show." Even though the salary might be $200,000, I'd have to.
They may not understand that.
They may not understand that. To answer your question, that was I wound up getting my first job in art news because I type really well, and plus the background I had.
So you mentioned like typing in the evening. Then when did that move up to, say, playwright, writer kind of situation? You got your fingers in a lot of stuff, but
Yes.
To your point, there's a level of commitment with any one of those particular areas. So I would assume you're still painting, but there must have been an increased interest, or you had a story to tell, or something that you wanted to get out that maybe drove that side.
Yes, it was actually, just to share another Wendy note, my favorite movie is Forrest Gump. And the life that's portrayed in that movie is kind of, I so relate to it, because you meet somebody and then suddenly you're owning a shrimp company, let's say, and your whole life changes again. So in regard to theater, I did kind of put it on hold during college. I did some theater, and maybe right after college, I auditioned for a play here or there. But then I also got a beautiful job after Art News at Wildenstein Gallery, which is in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. It turns out to be one of the major art collectors, also because I passed a typing test. And I got a job as assistant to the communications director at Wildenstein. And it was a beautiful townhouse on East 64th and 5th Avenue. So Wendy had another lucky job working there. And then they found out I was a painter too. The assistant to the president had her best friend just got involved with a gallery in the East Village. And this was 1983. She said, "Why don't you go down to the East Village and show Kathy your artwork, your paintings?" And I had never gotten officially an art show yet. There was one before, which was wonderful, yet at college. But then Kathy saw my work and introduced me to the director, Dennis, and they loved my work and gave me my first show in the gallery in the East Village, which became eventually a very trendy place in Manhattan. And a year later, they were Dennis had the opportunity to own the building or to run the building, and there's a whole bunch of playwrights that would go to the place, and he was starting a writing class. So I met a playwright, and he said, "Wendy, would you like to participate in this class?" I said, "Well, I'm never taking an official writing class in theater, although I've been in plays." He said, "Oh, come on, you could join us, and we can meet every Saturday." So I started writing at plays and creating dramas with Andrew Young at the Crane Theater. And then they opened a theater there, and we started putting on our plays. So one thing led to another. It was not planned. And then a small theater company blossomed from there. Another group of friends decided to go and rent a storefront off Broadway below Delancey Street. And they invited me to join them and then asked me to direct plays. Not only did I first learned how to write plays, but I've never really officially taken courses in direct. So I said, yes, I'll try it. And there's a saying, directors aren't born, they're made. So I learned how to direct plays and write them, and then became assistant director to Shakespeare in the Parking Lot. We do free to the community every summer. One thing just led to another, like a flow. And I truly do commit to everything I do full time.
And you say yes.
I say
to
yes.
everything. And then
pretty much.
You had your first art exhibit 2 years after graduating from college. Now,
Yes.
that's fast.
It was fast. It doesn't often happen. And I know how challenging it is to have an art show for most artists, and especially in Manhattan, although there's lots more options available, let's say, than here where we are now. But I was very grateful to receive them. And I wasn't totally aware. It's very funny to say this, but I feel very grateful that people like my art. I didn't expect that people would like my art. My teacher at college, Milton Resnick, who was he turned out, again, something unplanned. He's a very famous abstract expressionist, and his wife studied with William de Kooning, who was another famous abstract expressionist, and they were friends with Jackson Pollock in the 40s and 50s. So I walked into another artistic royalty that I, again, didn't know existed until I got there. And Milton saw one of my abstract paintings I did when I first started. He wanted me to paint large because he felt like I could just let it all out. And I started painting abstract first. And he said, if you could do that, you could do anything. And I took it literally. And then I started painting really beautiful color fields and expressionist paintings. And so he loved it, and my classmates loved it, but I still didn't know how it was going to be received in the world. Then there it is. It was welcomed.
They loved it.
I was lucky to sell at the show, which is also very rare. Just so grateful for everything. It's all unplanned, unforeseen. And I'm still bewildered. I mean, I know a lot of artists who maybe they don't realize it's really a gift they have, and maybe to learn to be humble and to use it for the better of humanity. I mean, I kind of kept realizing how special it was to have exhibitions and sell the work too.
So from exhibitions, and you mentioned the difficulty, let alone Manhattan plus the U.S., on your long list of exhibitions reviewed, you actually have had stuff in Europe. So kind of how does that process work? So, to your point, you struggle to get recognized in your own community or within your own local area, but then to spread out, if you will, into multiple countries.
That was also a similar, moment of fate, and walking into one thing leading to another like Forrest Gump experience. Because from that Crane Club gallery, which I am grateful for, and also Expanded Arts, then there was someone across the street, Christine Louise Danielle, who started a new gallery, Emerging Collector Gallery. And she had given the card to the people at the gallery, and she invited me to come over. And it became a very popular East Village hangout. And she accepted me to be in her gallery. So I'd start rotating 4 paintings a month at her gallery from 1986. So it's very easy for me to paint as it is. It's just a comfortable world. And by the way, I don't watch TV. So you're saying, how do you have time for it?
Where would you have time?
I know. I learned it just when I just am painting, usually when that's happening. That's another segue. But Christine invited me to be in her gallery, and she's from Paris. And then I noticed it was kind of a lot of Europeans coming to visit her in the summer, and my work was up. And then some young painters from Holland, from Amsterdam, came into the gallery in 1987, I believe it was. And they said, "Oh, we'd love to see Wendy's paintings in Amsterdam. Can we?" And they wanted to come to New York City. So Christine was like, "Oh, of course." So then we said yes to this. And I barely had any money. I was still always kind of working. I have 7 jobs right now. I'm always trying to make ends meet. Sorry. But I said yes to it. And I managed to pay for the airplane ticket. And there I appeared with all these paintings with 2 other artists from New York City to Amsterdam to stay on a houseboat. And then we had a beautiful show that July. And again, one thing led to another. These artists came to us. They loved the paintings. And then Christine started to develop more exchange shows with her friends. So from that one show, we got a show in Paris. And as an alternate show, we stayed in a beautiful area and in alternate spots, almost like courtyards and little mini galleries. They're so cute that we would go and we'd stay at someone's house, and somehow we'd be able to afford it all.
I'm still thinking about your houseboat in Amsterdam. How great was that?
It was amazing. Also, something I never knew existed. All these worlds just started to appear. Maybe because of the pre-med side of me and all the science and research and that whole and other world I'm in, and then this whole other world of culture and everything international I became exposed to, and I so loved it. I mean, the lifestyle in Europe is beautiful. The quality of life is beautiful. Healthcare for all. I mean, it's such a dream being there.
So we've done a lot of history about stuff, and that's fascinating. Current projects you'd like to talk about, or things that you currently are working on or have your hands in or whatever?
Okay. The current project, I became a filmmaker, and through all series of events, I'm currently working on trying to sell my short film is called Roses Are Blind. And then I'm trying to sell it this year, to pitch it to producers and have it picked up, hopefully by Netflix or HBO or major studios.
And you won awards for that.
Yes,
you need to mention that.
This is another Wendy story, but a big dream was to write Roses Are Blind. I had written it as a 3-act play at the Crane Club Gallery in the 80s. It was accepted really well then and went on to be produced in a play. And when Roland and I arrived to Fort Lauderdale, we ran our own theater and gallery, and then it was warmly received there. And then I went to Miami, and then I decided the big dream when we moved to Pine Island was to turn Roses Are Blind to a movie. So one of the actors, actually, and his wife, Christina, just went to film school in New York City, and they said they would love to do it, but let's do a short version of it. And so they got their teachers involved to say yes. And their teachers are Daniel Davis and Boyd Gaines, Kathleen McNenny, Purva Betty, and they were like the top. They've won Tony Awards and Academy, and these teachers volunteered to be in this movie. So it was, again, incredibly fortunate that not only was the film started that I wanted to get out there, but the people that joined in were of the highest level. So what I'm currently working on, hoping for this year, is to have it sold and get to the next level. The pandemic affected and graced us greatly, ironically, because film festivals went online during the pandemic. And we just finished it right before I had a major festival in Hollywood at the Chinese Theater. And then the pandemic happened that weekend. And that's when Trump called everyone home. And I was literally walking along the stars on Hollywood and that street. And they were taking in everything was closing up. And so anyway, that's what that's a lot to talk about in 1 second. But as a result, the pandemic, I was able to get into lots of festivals, started inviting me. That normally was more challenging to get into. So once the invite happened, we got in, and then the awards started. So then I started posting about it on Facebook, and Instagram started, and one thing's led to another. So that's where I am now. And as well as I joined a local film group. That's how Roses started. It's called the United Film Television Artists in Fort Myers. And they were so supportive of Roses Are Blind that they also wanted to make other movies that I've written, of plays that I've written. So last year we filmed 3 movies in addition to getting Roses out there.
Plus you write them too.
I write them.
And direct them and produce them. And
yes. It's been another experience. We just finished filming Sushi Bar, which is a comedy I wrote about life going to a sushi bar, and it's kind of a slice of life. To be the director, to be behind the camera is like an art that I've never experienced before, because I could be looking at the corner and make sure that that fan isn't in the film. And then the lens choice. And also, I'm such a low-key director that my cinematographer has been wonderful, Steven Schonberg. He's so talented. He's in Fort Myers too. He says, you got to say action. You got to say cut. And I'm like, so I'm not kind of like the one with the bullhorn. That's where I am now. I'm still learning so much. We're editing now. That's another process I'm learning.
They impact you a little bit as you've learning more about being a director. I had no idea that those professional cinematic lenses were all manual focus.
Right.
So not only kind of that composition that you're doing as a director, but now you need somebody then to make sure, like, do you want the actor to be blurry and they come into focus?
Right.
There's all these little subtle aspects of the movie that, I mean, as an actor, you're performing your role and saying your lines and conveying emotions. And here now you've got to like have that mapped out in your head.
Yes. And also no, because we don't necessarily know. Yes, but totally yes. Steven's lovely, and he's taught me that. And about the manual focus, and there's also the autofocus, which has been helpful. We did Father Knows Best last year, which is really has a new successful run. But he said this one has automatic, so I said okay. But then I learned about that. It's also what you want to portray. Maybe you do want to portray them out of focus and something in focus. And I'm kind of mesmerized by that art of it, and so there's a lot involved. And
it's like the passage of time. There's different ways to create that emotion in the viewer kind of stuff. So yeah, it's
so much.
I mean, I think people see like director on a credit and they're like, oh, that's a person sitting by. It's got to be massive.
It's massive. I'm up way past midnight now, editing and there's so much involved. And also sound. I know we spoke of sound. OMG, when that is the most important thing, as well as everything else, of course, getting the lines or telling the story in a not like we do it on a play in the theater, but telling a story in a movie is very different. It's a lot of less dialogue. When we filmed Roses Up Blind, I had 2 pages of dialogue going on. And when I think it was Boyd Gaines, he looked at my lines and he synopsized it all to 1 word. And that's how powerful it is when you see, and that to me was stunning, is that he is a great teacher for that. And they all are. Less is more. We may go back and forth in dialogue in regular life, but when it comes to a movie, the audience probably will make up the difference.
And I read where you were doing that with your paintings, the 52-footer now to a 1-inch by 2-inch.
Yes.
And how do you do that? Less is more? Too?
Oh, less is more. When I make I love to create minis. Roland's painting murals, but and we both paint murals, but create minis is kind of keep it in the same proportions. And it could take 3 years to do a mini. So these are all in oil, but I don't know. It just kind of make that world work.
Well, we didn't get a chance to talk about the New Light Foundation. Roland did when we interviewed him, but I know people can go out to New Light.
It's newlightfoundation.org.
And they can find out about that and how you're teaching, and you have scholarships. So that's very rewarding, I'm sure.
Yeah, we do it on Saturday. We just went to another community and we taught paintings to the children and the elders. That's what we love to do as well.
That's great. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you. I mean, it's unbelievable how much you say yes and you succeed, and it's just wonderful. And I can see the happiness in you.
It's an honor. And thank you for the opportunity to share Wendy's world with you.
We hope you enjoyed our Pine Island Experience podcast. If you have any ideas for us, people to interview, or any comments, please feel free to email them to us at pineislandexperience@gmail.com. That's pineislandexperience, all one word, @gmail.com. Don't forget to like us, and you may subscribe to this podcast using all the major catchers like Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Thanks again for listening, and remember, island life is a constant vacation. We'll see you on the next podcast.